Where some games zig, others zag. And sometimes that's exactly what you want. You want to boot up a game and immediately think, what the hell is this? In a good way. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 big games that aren't like any other games, part 2. Starting off with number 10, it is Noire. You gotta admit, Noire is a weird game. And I don't just mean the extremely jarring face capture technology that looks bizarre and kind of grotesque in 2025. There's more to this game that makes it such an interesting outlier in the AAA space. For one thing, even though it's got the meticulously detailed open world you'd expect from a Rockstar game, there's not a lot you can do in it. It's not GTA where the world's a chaotic sandbox. Noire is, it's got more in common with an old school adventure game than anything else. It's aggressively linear. You just go from one case to the next, collecting clues and accusing everyone you see of lying, making out of nowhere libelous claims about their character, and then doubting anything they say in return.
You're feeling guilty about this, Michelle. What were you up to that you missed your mother?
You're crazy. I was waiting out front exactly where she asked me to be.
In all seriousness, the true doubt, lie, interrogation part of the game is weird, as is the fact that you can completely botch a case and the game will keep going. Like, there's no fail state in Noire other than the death and the occasional scripted shootout. Otherwise, you can be as good or as terrible of a detective as you want. It's got old school clue giving and detectiving with a Rockstar budget and world. That's what makes this thing so unusual, and there's just nothing like it. Even if it's extremely old, lacks the action game elements like car chases and the rare moments where you actually shoot a gun. It's weird. Another big reason why this game is so unique is because Rockstar didn't make it. They published it, but developer Team Bondi are the ones that actually made the game, and it was reportedly a pretty hellish development cycle, so it's not really a surprise that the Noire follow-up they were planning never materialized. One thing we really hope does materialize is you pressing the subscribe button. Surprisingly few people watching this video are subscribed, and it helps us out a massive amount when people do it. We also hope it helps you see stuff you want to see, because it certainly helps us make more of it. Thanks for hitting subscribe, and let's get back to it.
Tell me what I want to know, Parnell, or I will have half the LAPD down here tearing this place apart. You're hiding something.
And number 9, it's Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle. This one just had everybody scratching their heads back when it got revealed. Well, actually before it got revealed. This one leaked ahead of the official announcement, and I remember the entire premise being so bizarre that a lot of people just kind of thought that it was a hoax. A Mario game crossed with the Rabbids, those flash in the pan Ubisoft Minion ripoffs that nobody gives a shit about. And it's a turn-based tactical game where Mario and all his friends are packing heat. What the hell is that? It's too crazy to be real, and yet here we are years later talking about the very real thing that it was. Probably the most shocking thing about Kingdom Battle isn't that it exists, it's that it's actually great. It ended up being one of the best games on the Switch and really benefited from the early hype around the system. It sold surprisingly well, to the order of 10 million copies, which is a massive hit, to be clear. So what the hell even is it? It's sort of XCOM, but with more emphasis on movement and stringing together combos. It's actually a pretty innovative combat system. The game manages to keep things interesting between battles by letting you run around and explore freely. There's some Mario-style platformer stuff along with the XCOM stuff. It's an unusual combination that somehow manages to work really well. The funny thing about this game is that even though they went and made a full sequel with the subtitle Sparks of Hope, there's still nothing that plays quite like Kingdom Battle, because they completely reworked the combat system in the second game. In the first, the grid-based is the order of the day, and the sequel is gridless, which changes the nature of the gameplay significantly.
Okie dokie! Woohoo!
They're both good games, but I think Kingdom Battle definitely benefited the most simply because of how unexpected it was. They got people's attention, and the team up itself is absurd, but the surprisingly solid gameplay kept people playing long past when the novelty had worn off. Also, I'm just gonna say it, I prefer the grid version to the gridless. I think it just works better. Moving on to number 8, it's Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, which, I mean, when you hear there's a new Indiana Jones game coming out from Bethesda, your first instinct is to go, oh, Uncharted. Or if not that, given it's Machine Games making it, maybe something more realistic, but along the lines of the Wolfenstein games, right? They already had the basic template for an indie game following the New Order. There's some shooting, you sneak around, a lot of cutscenes, it's very linear, traditional FPS design, Nazis.
Ich könnte sie hier und jetzt erschießen und keiner würde es hinterfragen. Also hinterfragen auch Sie nicht meine Hingabe zum Führer!
Faszinierend.
But man, we did not expect what we got. This game has more in common with Dishonored or an Arcane game than anything else, but that doesn't quite describe what makes the Great Circle such a unique and enjoyable FPS. It's not just that you got these big open levels to explore and there's a stealth element, it's also how they put a little bit of Hitman in there with the whole disguise element. It's more simplified, but there's a lot of time spent sneaking around in plain sight that feels, it feels really right for the franchise. But it's also something you wouldn't really expect from a game necessarily. You going into this thing expecting it to be bombastic and crazy right from the start. You expect it to be paced like a AAA blockbuster game, but it is not. It is slow at the start. The first level being the Vatican, where there's basically zero shooting. Nobody even has guns here. And in the second level, you start dealing with actual gun-wielding enemies, but you're generally bonking them on the head with the butt of a gun rather than engaging in a full-on shootout.
Allora, fammi pensare un attimo.
Off to the dreamland.
There's also a slapstick element to the game, which makes it play like nothing else. Improvised weapons are everywhere, which makes combat feel like less of a delicate ballet and more of a drunk bar fight. It's a weird game because it clearly draws inspiration from other games, along with the developer's previous work like Chronicles of Riddick Escape from Butcher Bay, but take it all together and it just doesn't feel like anything else out there, which is surprising given the IP. You'd think they'd take the safest route possible, but they didn't, and it paid off. At number 7, it's the Kingdom Hearts series. On its most basic level, Kingdom Hearts is Disney meets Final Fantasy. In reality, the Final Fantasy characters are essentially cameos loosely based on their original characters, while the main cast is a series of Final Fantasy-esque original generation characters. There's also oddball crossovers like Donald Duck interacting with Tron. It's all wrapped up around a story involving the original generation, which is infamous for being confusing, and before the PS4 collection, it's really hard to keep up with because it all came out on wildly different platforms. Story details were often locked to certain international releases, and it's also much darker than your average Disney cartoon. There's really nothing else quite like Kingdom Hearts, and it's not just because of the insane mashup of Final Fantasy and Disney characters. That's just the most obvious layer of the insanity to these games. But it goes so much deeper. These games just kind of do their own thing. They're RPGs, kind of, like they're action games, sort of. Honestly, they don't fit in any one category. And then you add the gummy ship and all the mini games, and you got this game that's kind of similar to action RPGs, but not really. The entire structure of the game where you're hopping between different Disney worlds while the OCs get into bafflingly convoluted stories that are borderline incomprehensible is strange enough, but then you have this real-time combat system with a lot of menus to deal with and party members to manage. It's unusual, and by Kingdom Hearts 3, they've integrated all these movement powers on top of everything else. The plots are pure Nomura and borderline gibberish sprouted by everyone. It's legendary how gibberish the dialogue can be.
See? Found him.
Yeah, I guess this counts.
The plots are crazy, the crossovers are crazy, but if the actual gameplay that surrounded all the madness wasn't interesting, it wouldn't work. So, critically speaking, the Kingdom Hearts games are actually fun, and somehow it all does work. And number 6 is Brutal Legend. This Double Fine tribute to the legends of rock and roll is so weird that the publisher, Electronic Arts, basically told a lie through omission to get people to play it on launch day. They released a demo, but it was all open world driving and hacking and slashing, so players rightly assumed that the game was that. Sort of a heavy metal Mad Max, that was what the demo sold us, but the actual game is so bizarre, it's kind of baffling that EA even let them do it. It's not just a hack and slash game with some open world elements, it's also a full-on real-time strategy game that you control from a third-person perspective. So you build units, capture control points, and give orders to your army while battling it out with an enemy army doing the same thing. Command & Conquer has some rad tunes, but I'm not sure how much overlap there is in the overall real-time strategy demographic in metalheads. I'm not going to say there's no one, but it's a Venn diagram with dads in the middle, for sure. The concept of a more action-oriented RTS isn't new, and you can tell that Double Fine was clearly influenced by other games like Sacrifice, but the way they combine heavy metal culture, action game combat, and open-world driving with real-time strategy gameplay, it's totally unique.
Yes. That would bust them piggies nuts and bolts if we were a little closer.
It kind of flopped because it wasn't what people were looking for in a game like this. But sometimes you just want a game that you can... I mean, it's totally out there, and it's awesome when it gets a massively inflated budget, you know? It's also like a way back Jack Black video game role, if you're ever interested in... I don't know. It's one of the most interesting games EA's ever published. And number 5 is Medal of Honor Airborne. The late 2000s was really interesting for EA. It's back when they were willing to experiment and do weird stuff. Then they all flopped, and they went back to making the safest of safe bets. But hey, at least we got Medal of Honor Airborne out of the deal. By most accounts, it's just another average World War II military shooter, but it does have one element that makes it totally unique and very memorable, and that's how the game works. Instead of starting each level at a preset location like basically every other FPS, Airborne starts you off in a plane and you get to choose where you want to land on a map. Mechanically, it's basically like choosing your landing site in a battle royale game, but it's entirely single player.
Command has instructed all units to locate and sabotage any and all enemy communications equipment.
The maps are large and they have multiple objectives and they can be completed in any order, so in general the game is a lot more non-linear than your average Call of Duty Medal of Honor type game. It's also really short. There's only a handful of missions and most of them aren't that long, but the basic idea of para-dropping into a level makes it unique among FPS games, especially because it's not a stealth game. It's just a full-on FPS that you can decide where the mission starts. And number 4 is the Dragon's Dogma series. There's nothing like these games out there. There's bits and pieces that could probably be compared to other games, right? The living world is something like Skyrim. Combat is kind of, but not quite like Monster Hunter. But then you've got this whole pawn system on top of that. In the many weird ways, the games incorporate fast travel and quest design and make them very unique among role-playing games. Visually, the closest analog is probably the Souls series, but they're nothing like those games. They really are closer to the open-world Monster Hunter games in terms of how combat plays out, but that doesn't capture the exact experience of this at all. There's just nothing like them, for good and for bad, because these games do have problems.
Do not waste this chance. Press home our advantage. Strike fast and true, and our quarry will fall.
Sometimes they're a little too quirky for their own good, and, well, that's at least extremely memorable, right? It cannot be understated just how weird the pawns are. They're the interdimensional servants that you can recruit into your party. They all have AI that learns and adapts the more you use them, and it's super weird. It's one of the uber-ambitious game systems that doesn't really make for a better game, but it makes Dragon's Dogma more interesting. Having an AI party that adapts to you and gives you clues about combat and just generally behaves their own way, it makes it seem like they're more than just faceless AI automations, at least. I mean, it's an interesting choice. I'm not sure it's entirely successful, but they did try, and they did make something super strange and interesting. At number 3 is Killer 7. While Suda51's name attached to a project isn't necessarily the most meaningful thing in the world anymore, Killer 7 was the absolute height of his power. How this got greenlit at Capcom is a mystery to me. It's a game that seems custom built to be as alienating as possible to a general audience, so yeah, Capcom still made it. I mean, it's a super strange and deliberately niche game that Capcom made and got an exclusive deal at Nintendo somehow. Just trying to describe what you do in this game is a struggle. It's a first-person adventure game where you're on a track and you can only ever move forward and backward when the game gives you a direction to go. There are invisible enemies called Heaven Smiles that have to be scanned and then shot precisely in their weak point. There's puzzles that make no sense, dialogue that makes no sense, and entire cutscenes that are literally just big non sequiturs. This game is truly bizarre, and in all honesty, it's not that fun to play. But it is incredibly atmospheric. Like, it's a bad dream of a mid-2000s paranoid dude that you play through. There's nothing else like it, for good reason. Just wrapping your head around the controls is enough to send any rational mind running. Now, games like this are exclusively indies, but back in the day it was possible to get a huge publisher like Capcom to publish something as strange as this and give it a full big-budget production. I don't think we'll ever get another game like Killer 7, and maybe once is enough, I don't know. And number 2 is The Last Guardian. In the previous list about the biggest games that play like nothing else, I talked about Japan Studio and Fumito Ueda's masterpiece, Shadow of the Colossus. It's a great game, and there's really nothing else quite like it. And in 2016, they followed it up with a game that's even more unusual, where other developers at least attempted to copy some of the more memorable aspects of Shadow of the Colossus. Nobody is lining up to do the same with The Last Guardian. At its most basic level, it is a lot like Shadow and Ico. You control a little guy who can jump and climb around an ancient-looking environment. The big difference is the big bird dog cat thing named Trico that stole our hearts before making us throw our controllers through the screen in frustration. The gimmick here is that you have no control over Trico. Instead, you have to wordlessly convince this capricious critter to do what you want in order to progress the game. That's where the game really innovates, but it's also frustrating as hell. Trico is controlled by an AI, and sometimes it will not do what you want it to. Like, it's very much like a real animal in that respect. What makes it so difficult is how vague it really is. Like, it's hard to tell what the game wants you to do with Trico a lot of the time. For some players, it's an accurate reflection of what it's like to have a pet, especially like a cat. You ever tried to herd cats? It's a phrase for a reason. It can be difficult, but there's also something uniquely satisfying about finally getting Trico to do the thing you want them to do. For players who aren't charmed by pet stuff and just want direct feedback and understandable control, they're probably going to be frustrated by The Last Guardian. But it is a truly unique experience. It may be miserable regarding the controls, or to be accurate, lack of controls, but it's definitely different.
Iederasebo yakudu yuli yanozu yarote awuyuku ya akastiata. Toriko iadia no keti Ari inik.
And finally, at number 1, it is Spore, this 2008 grand strategy game. It's almost completely forgotten about today, but back when it launched, it was one of the most highly anticipated games of all time. It was created by Will Wright, the visionary behind SimCity and The Sims, and it was developed by Maxis. Spore was going to be the god game that beat all other god games. The game was so ambitious that it starts with the literal Big Bang and the inception of all life, all the way to a galaxy-spanning interstellar empire. The ideas were huge and all sounded pretty intriguing way back when, and even in execution, it's pretty unique in terms of, it. But there is a reason why most people don't care about Spore anymore either. The basic idea of guiding a civilization from its inception as a basic and rudimentary form of life and guide its evolution for hundreds of thousands of years, it sounds like a good idea. It is a good idea even, but how it all plays out is so basic that it's really not that fun. It's cool playing as an amoeba that slowly evolves and grows eyes and spikes and emerges from the sea to walk on land. Grows further until you got entire cities of little alien creatures. It's a fun idea. But they overdid it in terms of ease and accessibility. So there's not really any depth. And this is a game where depth would be, a good thing. Like, it's evolution. Evolution is messy and complicated, and depth would be good. But hey, if you want a game that lets you make aliens that look like dicks, this is the game for you. It's so easy that literally anyone can do it, and I'm pretty sure everyone did at least once. It's almost harder not to make dick aliens. If Spore has a lasting legacy, it's that. And that's all for today. Leave us a comment, let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications, and as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter, Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time, right here on gameranx.